Welcome to the Josh Madden Show. On today's episode, we'll be discussing the Auburn versus Oregon game and the state of the Pac-12 in general. So first, let's dive in to Oregon versus Auburn. It was the marquee game of Week 1 of the college football season. There's two ranked teams going at it. It was an exciting game, a rematch of the 2012 national championship game. Kinda, obviously, it's not the same rosters or anything, but same teams. Um, So it was slated to be a really good game. I think it turned out to be a really good game as well. I mean, it was kind of sloppy at times, but I think it was entertaining. It was the game that I had the most fun watching. Week 1, um, it was good overall. I think both teams actually looked pretty good. I don't really fault Oregon too much for losing. In my personal top 25, they didn't drop very far. They're still in the top 20 for me. I think Auburn looked really good. I think they probably should be a top 10 team now. Let's kind of dive into it a little more and get a little more specific. If you look at the stats for Justin Herbert looked like the better quarterback just from statistics compared to Bo Nix. He completed 28 out of 37 passes. He threw for 242 yards and had one touchdown and no interceptions. Probably should have had two touchdowns. There was a drop in the end zone, but obviously you can't give points for what should have been. Overall, I think Justin Herbert played really well. The thing that I worry about most with Justin Herbert is his accuracy. He had like a 57% completion percentage last season. That's just not going to do it at the NFL level. I'm a fan of Justin Herbert in general, but I think he needs to clean up some of the throws that he makes to really take that next step. And you saw a little bit of that in this game. I think he looked really good. Now moving on to Bo Nix. This was his first start. He's a true freshman, so take these stats with a grain of salt. But he was 13 for 31 passing, threw for 177 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. So that's not a very good stat line, just looking at the raw numbers. But if you watch the game, what was interesting, Bo Nix, in the first half, especially the first quarter, he looked really shaky. I mean, you could chalk that up to nerves. It was his first big game. It was his first game starting in Auburn. And you could tell I'd be a little nervous because if you dig into Bo Nix's backstory, he's been an Auburn fan forever. He was at the national championship game where they beat the Ducks. So this was huge for him. He's wanted to go to Auburn forever. His dad played for Auburn. He's quarterback for them in the 70s. So he's grew up wanting to be an Auburn Tiger forever. And he finally got that chance today, and it's a big stage. It's a ranked game. Nerves were high, so you can kind of give him a little bit of a pass. So early on, he made some mistakes, but at the end, what really impressed me with Bo Nix, he went out there and looked like a veteran on that last drive. The last drive where they threw the touchdown and that ended up winning them the game. He looked like that. He'd done that 100 times. I mean, stone cold out there, looked great. I think Auburn's got a really good one for years to come. Bo Nix has looked awesome. Um, Moreover, just on the game, I think it was sloppy from both teams from a coaching standpoint. On the Auburn side, they kicked extra points when they probably should have went for two. It was right before or after they scored the game-winning touchdown, they decided to just kick the extra point instead of going for two, which gave the Ducks a chance to tie. Um, Kind of a very bizarre coaching decision from Gus Malzahn there. Earlier in the game, he also could have went for two and tied it up himself, but decided to just kick the extra point for no real reason. Yeah, it doesn't really make a difference if you're down two or you're down one at that point when you have a chance to tie. So just kind of some weird stuff for Gus Malzahn there, but I think overall good. Their offense looked pretty solid in that second half. They struggled in the first half, but I think they came around and looked pretty good later. On the Ducks side, uh, Mario Cristobal, he wasted two timeouts essentially. So just to kind of give you the rundown of what happened, Justin Herbert gets hurt on a play. They run it all the way down. They call a timeout. He has to go off the field. They have to bring in their backup quarterback, and they run it down, call a timeout, and they try to bring Justin Herbert back into the game. Now, you can't do that. If you go out for an injury, you have to sit out a play. So they try to bring Justin Herbert back in. The referees tell them they can't do that. So then he has to go back off the field. So they have to burn another timeout. So they have no timeouts at this point in the fourth quarter of a really close game. It's just really strange. And obviously those timeouts didn't come back to make much of a difference because they only had 3 seconds left when they got the ball back. But still, just a strange coaching decision there. Hopefully they learn from it. I think Oregon's really good. I think they're kind of one of the only hopes for the Pac-12 this season. We'll get into that in a little bit here, but just some strange decisions there. And then talk about the last play of the game. There's 3 seconds left. Oregon's on their side of the field. They actually got a really good return. They try to throw a Hail Mary up to the end zone. Justin Herbert throws it out of the back of the end zone and doesn't even give his wide receivers a chance. And you would hate to see that from a coaching standpoint. I hated to see it just watching the game. I didn't really have a dog in the fight. I didn't really have a particular rooting interest. But you at least want to see him give his wide receivers a chance, and they can't catch the ball if it's thrown 10 yards out of bounds out of the back of the end zone. So I wasn't really impressed with Justin Herbert there, but still a really good game for the first week of college football. I enjoyed it. It was the most fun game that I watched week one for sure. Now let's kind of talk about the Pac-12 in general, kind of where they've been the last couple years, where they need to improve. It's kind of been a big story that they're kind of the weakest Power 5 conference, and it's hard to debate that. I'm a Pac-12 guy. I live on the West Coast. I live in Washington State. I've been a Washington Huskies fan my whole life. So it's hard for me to say that the Pac-12 is a weak conference, but when you look at it objectively, they really haven't done much to prove otherwise. Like 2 years ago, their bowl record was 1-9. They only won one bowl game 2 years ago. Last year, they went 3-4. They haven't had a winning bowl record the last 2 years, and they've looked bad against out-of-conference teams just during the regular season. And you saw it again with the Oregon-Auburn game. Oregon had every chance to win and kind of take back a big W for the entire Pac-12, and they dropped the ball, which is kind of the story of the Pac-12. And playing out of conference games, they have lots of chances, and they just can't get it done. And it sucks to see because people who've been watching college football for a long time know that the Pac-12 is generally a really competitive conference, has good teams. Traditionally USC's been really good. Washington has had really good teams in the past. Oregon a little more recently, with Chip Kelly, Marcus Mariota, those guys had really, really good teams. And it's kind of sad to see where the Pac-12 has fallen to. And you can't really say it's recruiting because the Pac-12 has really good recruiting classes every year. They just they don't get like the size that Auburn or like the SEC teams or Big Ten or ACC teams get. I mean, you look at just Auburn's defense compared to Oregon's defense in that game. Auburn looked huge compared to Oregon, and they just, for some reason, they just don't match up well with that kind of stuff, and it sucks to see that the Pac-12 is like that. I think Utah is pretty good this year. Oregon obviously looked pretty good against Auburn. I think Washington's interesting. Jacob Eason looks legit. He looks really, really good. Utah's defense is insane. They're going to be really good. Stanford's always kind of relevant, but I just don't see them really competing for the playoff this year. If I was choosing, I would say that it's got to be Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, and Oklahoma. If I had to pick right now, those would be the teams that I think are going to get into the playoff. I don't see a Pac-12 team getting in. For the Big 12, I think maybe Texas has a chance to get in also. Ohio State, maybe Michigan, but I don't see Utah or Oregon or Washington getting up to that level to compete for the playoffs at this point. They really needed Oregon to win. And that's tough for me to say because I've rooted against the Ducks my whole life being a Huskies fan. It's a pretty big rivalry around here, but it would have been nice to see them get a big win against an SEC team, kind of the dominant conference in college football for a long while now. It would have been really nice to see them get a win there. Didn't get it done. I hope the Pac-12 becomes more relevant again. I don't think they're irrelevant. I still think they have really good teams. And, they churn out NFL talent still. Justin Herbert's one of the best players in the country. He's going to get drafted really high next year if everything kind of keeps going the way that it is. So I mean, the Pac-12 has talent. They have good coaches. They have teams that have a history of winning. They just need to be able to put everything together and make a playoff run. And I just don't see it this year. I don't really see it next year either. Hopefully, a couple years down the road, they'll kind of develop into a power conference again, the way they should be. All right, I think that's all I've got for this one today, guys. Thanks for watching again. If you liked it, consider liking the video. Leave a comment if you want to continue the discussion. And feedback is, like I said, is always welcome here. And thank you guys for watching. Appreciate it.